Hey, smoke up, Johnny! What is going on, guys? Thanks for coming back for part 2 of the John Hughes Marathon. Hot, fresh popcorn. For part 2 of the marathon, we're doing The Breakfast Club, written and directed by John Hughes. So this is John Hughes' second movie written and directed by. It came out in 1985, same year as Weird Science. He was just pumping out the movies. While they have a very similar John Hughes style and feel to them, they definitely had their own motive and their own goal of a feeling. 16 Candles was definitely more about the part of your high school years where there was no real problems in life yet for you. You were just worried about the lovey-dovey stuff. This movie introduces more of the problems that teens can deal with, the serious stuff that teens can deal with. And in my opinion, this is John Hughes' best film. I think that all the other movies of his are great. I love more some than the others, but to me, this is the one that still holds up. And I think a lot of kids that are in high school, no matter what decade you're in, can relate to this movie. It's such a good depiction of all the different types of personalities. Where 16 Candles made fun of a lot of the stereotypes, this movie focuses and hones in on the individuals and the personalities they all had, and maybe the reason those stereotypes and personalities existed stemmed from their home life or things they had to deal with, their upbringing. Dives deeper into what's really going on in the everyday life of a teenager. So this movie is starring, once again, Molly Ringwald and Anthony Michael Hall. God, I love Molly Ringwald. But we got some new additions this time. Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, and Ali Sheedy. And those are your main characters of the movie. Molly Ringwald plays a character named Claire. It's kind of your stereotypical preppy, popular girl, hot and cute, and everybody loves her. And Anthony Michael Hall plays Brian. He's kind of the same character he was in 16 Candles, but not quite as brazen as he was in 16 Candles. He's a little bit more quiet in this film and a little standoffish. He wants to succeed. He's focused on academics. Then you've got Judd Nelson as John Bender, or everybody just refers to him as Bender. I love his character. His character was one of my favorites in the 80s film back then. I remember as a kid thinking that dude was the coolest. And every now and then you meet somebody in your high school that would kind of remind you of him. I was really young when this movie came out, so when I finally saw this movie, there were people that I knew that were older than me, that let's say I was in 6th or 7th grade, that were in high school that reminded me of Bender. Man, I thought they were so cool. And Bender's character was just a rebel. He was crazy. He just was always trying to do something to go against the grain. Ali Sheedy plays Allison, who is this really quirky, weird person who doesn't speak and does weird things like eat cereal on her sandwiches. And Emilio Estevez plays Andrew, who's like your typical jock. They kind of touch on the reasons that he's a jock, because he's got a very athletically driven family. Then we got basically our villain of the movie, Paul Gleason, who plays Richard, or Dick. Perfect name for a villain of the movie, because man, he is a dick. Plays the principal who's all just caught up in himself, basically painting the picture that this was a guy that wanted more in life and he never kind of could let go of what he wanted and became a principal. Now he's turned into what he hated as a kid. You see other recurring actors that John Hughes has had in his one previous film in 16 Candles. You got John Capellos. He played the fiance to Molly Ringwald's sister in 16 Candles. And that's pretty much the basis of the cast. There's more people in the movie here and throughout, but these are the people the movie focuses on. And those few actors, amongst a few other actors at that time, got branded as the Brat Pack. And it actually happened because of this article a guy was writing, and he just said something about them being called the Brat Pack because they were kind of popular. Within this 1 year of film coming out in like 1984, all these actors had sort of gotten popularized very quickly. And this was way before there was YouTube or anything like that. So for actors to get that famous that quickly at that young age was sort of a first. They just got named the Brat Pack because they got famous at such a young age. But at the core of it, they were all really good actors and people really trying to make a career for themselves. And most of them did. Well, first off though, this movie went straight from the PG rating that 16 Candles had all the way to an R. Now it's not over the top R with language bad or anything like that, but it definitely shows you what real teenagers did. It focuses on the reality of what it was like to be a teenager then. 16 Candles kind of did the bubblegum side of it with a little heartbreak involved. This shows the reality of it. This is what it was like. And man, just really takes me back. I mean, so many places in this high school look exactly like my high school, except for the library. That library was badass. But the movie's really just a huge character study of teenagers in the 80s. And even the cast says one of the things they loved about working with John Hughes is that he basically was one of them. He was reflecting on things that had happened to him. And why they didn't happen to him in the 80s it were still things that happened. You know, things that happened in 70s and 80s and 90s in high school, while they take different shapes and forms, it's still the same thing. There's hazing that goes on, there's the seniors picking on the freshmen, that whole kind of thing. There's cliques that people stick within, all that still exists. Well, when people were going to school. One of the things that you could tell from the film that conveys from real life onto the screen, John Hughes made an extremely comfortable work environment for these teenagers to come on to work on a daily basis. That way, it wasn't so weird and awkward for them, because try to put yourself in that shoes. If you're 13, 14, 15 years old, it's gonna be kind of weird. Watching this movie is truly like going through a yearbook. Even from the way it starts off, it just starts showing all these pictures of the school. It's showing like trophy cabinets, the paddle, the front of the school. There's one part where it actually shows a picture of the janitor that's there now, but it shows him when he was in high school going there. And the first thing you hear starting off is the Don't You Forget About Me song by the Simple Minds, which is synonymous with this movie at this point. When that song's played, people are like, oh yeah, Breakfast Club, and they'll do this. You're seeing Shermer High School at the beginning, and all of a sudden, like, this glass breaking effect of the screen happens, just like Friday the 13th. Yeah! So in a nutshell, what this movie's about is these teenagers having to go to detention on a Saturday. All of them are different walks of life. None of them would ever get along or have anything in common with each other, but they're forced to be in the same room for 8 hours this day. And the principal's coming in there being a dick to him, just showing his true colors, how he just really wants dominance and true power over these kids. That's how he gets his rocks off.
Don't mess with the bull, young man. You'll get the horns.
You get to see just them, this whole thing unfold. And it kind of reminds me when I was going to summer camp as a kid. You never knew anybody, and even by the end of that first day, you were already like best friends with a couple people. And this movie really depicted that over about an 8-hour period. If you were stuck in a room like that with 4 to 5 people, at the end of the day, you kind of know each other. I mean, it just starts off immediately, all the kids being dropped off to school, and right there, you get to kind of see what these personalities are like by the way their parents are with them being dropped off, or in Bender's situation, walks to school, no parent drops him off. So the whole thing is why they're sitting in detention. They're supposed to write this 1,000-word essay about why they're in detention and what they've learned from being in detention. Throughout the movie, they're describing all these quirks about people. I especially love when Ali Sheedy's biting her fingernails. Everybody in my family hates that about me, or probably all my friends. I bite the hell out of my fingernails, and it's noisy. The whole movie is consistently throughout depicting the complications and the true struggles it is to be a teenager, the things that you really go through. A lot of that stuff is overshadowed by the adults and the real life and the real world. But hey, adults were young and were kids at one point. And John Hughes has such a great way of, again, validating their lives and what they're going through. There's so many great lines in this movie, it's hard for me to even just start pointing them all out.
Being bad feels pretty good.
Shut up, Pee-wee.
You ask me one more question and I'm beating the shit out of you.
The next time I have to come in here, I'm cracking skulls.
Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe?
Hey, smoke up, Johnny!
But I love like when Judd Nelson immediately starts dogging on everybody and pointing out all the stupid clubs and ridiculous clubs they're in and how ridiculous it is. Anthony Michael Hall is just like, I'm in the math club and the physics club.
Well, what I had said was I'm in the math club, the Latin club, and the physics club.
And the principal's constantly making a fool out of himself. Every time he's trying to come in there and assert his power and his authority, he just makes himself look more like a jackass. And he's telling them all to sit in their chair. And Bender's just like, well, if he gets up, we'll all get up.
That's right.
If he gets up, we'll all get up. It'll be anarchy.
It'll be anarchy. But they're getting up to no good, and somehow or another, they start to rub off on each other, and they're having to, escape the classroom at some point and do this and this and that, and do this and this and this and that. They're always fighting, going back and forth, especially Bender pointing everything out that's wrong with everybody and their flaws. But ultimately what he's doing, he's telling the truth about them all. And I know a guy like that, who's a great guy on the inside, he really is a good guy, just had a hard life, and he's a little blunt. And we get to learn a lot about the characters too when they're eating lunch, and they all pull out their own lunches and what they have. Molly Ringwald's got the sushi, Anthony Michael Hall's got the well-balanced, nutritious lunch that Bender's coming over trying to jack with and steal some of his stuff. Milo Estevez's got the massive lunch where he pulls out like 4 sandwiches and donuts and banana, all kinds of stuff. Ali Sheedy does the cereal on the sandwich and the pixie sticks. Even all of them, including Judd Nelson, are weirded out by that at that point. But every time Bender and all of them start interacting with each other, you get to find out just a little bit more about each character. And I love that, especially when you start seeing that, man, Bender's got a really jacked up life. And that part where Bender's going through the ceiling and he's telling that joke, I've always wanted to hear the rest of that joke. He says like a blonde walks into the bar with a poodle in one hand and
A naked blonde walks into a bar with a poodle under one arm and a 2-foot salami under the other. She lays the poodle on the table. Bartender says, "I suppose you won't be needing a drink." Naked lady says,
I always wanted to hear the rest of that joke. But the more we find out about these characters, the more you realize that they all have some sort of pressure involved in their life. They have a really jacked up life, especially when they have the confessions with each other and they all really start telling each other what's going on with their lives, and it gets emotional. There's a lot of really emotional monologues that happen to this movie that it's kind of like a group therapy session for them all, but that actually turns out to be pretty successful. They're pointing out the fact that, you know, they lie about things, they lie to be cool. Best way I could describe it is just a huge character study of multiple teenage lives in the 80s. But the two scenes where Bender's explaining his home life, getting the cigarettes for Christmas and then showing the like cigar burn on his arm, and then when he's in the closet with the principal, that scene is really gripping, and there's some personality in here that you can relate with, whether you're the jock and the athlete that feels pressure from his father or something like that to always win, or you're the scholar like Anthony Michael Hall who feels the pressure from his parents to always do good in school, the popular girl that feels like she just needs to be always cool. I mean, it just dives in really deep to reality in the way it really is, and I think that it really opened the door for kids to kind of be paid more attention to. I love it when the principal's trying to eat lunch though and he just pours all of his coffee all over his lunch. Great scene. Also, when he walks in there, he says, "This principal I will not be made a fool of." By the end of the movie, they all become friends. And you feel like that next Monday is going to be a good Monday. You know, now at this point they smoke pot with each other, they really opened up. And after they smoke and get all high, we got that famous montage scene where they're running around, dancing with each other. Emilio Estevez screams and the window breaks. And again, John Hughes throws in some of that slapstick just for a second, but it doesn't take you out of what's really going on. It's just for a minute. And really gone in depth about what's wrong, some of them calling each other out. It's just, like I said, a group therapy session that even as a person watching it, I found myself learning some things and appreciating some things about people's lives. And I got emotional multiple times throughout the movie. But I love how you think that all of these things are gonna happen. Like you would immediately think that Emilio Estevez and Molly Ringwald, their two characters are gonna hook up. And you kind of think that Ali Sheedy and Judd Nelson's character would probably hook up, but it's totally the opposite. Molly Ringwald and Judd hook up by the end, and Ali Sheedy and Emilio hook up by the end. And Anthony Michael Hall is just more confident about himself as a person. He's not so shy. John Hughes also inserts himself here for just a minute at the very end as Anthony Michael Hall's dad. John Hughes cameo. Like all other John Hughes movies, ends on a good note. It ends really happy. It shows that these guys, after being stuck together for 8 hours, actually learned a lot about each other and themselves, and they're excited about moving forward instead of worried about all the pressure that's been set in their lives. Now they've sort of had a breather, and they can see clearly. You have the letter that's being read by the principal at the end that's really great, that depicts all that. And then the classic scene of Judd Nelson in the football field, 16 Candles and this one. Two ultimate classic scenes in cinematic history. Like when you watch montages of movies, when they do the best of the decade stuff or what all that scene's in there. And so is the 16 Candles one. So, great film. I love this movie. Like I said, I think it's his best one. I think it holds up while still being an 80s movie and having the 80s music and all that, which, by the way, this was the only one not done by Our Newborn. The music's done by a guy named Keith Forsey. You could have fooled me, though, because it sounds exactly like Our Newborn stuff. I'm not sure what went on there, if there were some contractual agreements or obligations otherwise, but for all the other movies and 16 Candles, it was Our Newborn. And also, this Blu-ray is fantastic. It's got an amazing set of special features, like this 12-part documentary on there that's called Sincerely Yours. And it really does go through the Breakfast Club with a fine-tooth comb, tells you how it all started. It's got a little thing on there about the Brat Pack, but I highly recommend this one. Not only does it look great, but the special features are awesome. So, Breakfast Club. Oh yeah. Classy, nostalgic, long-lasting popcorn. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning back in for some more hot, fresh popcorn. I really appreciate it. Keep those subscribers coming, and make sure you tune in for part 3 of the marathon, Weird Science. You can find me on Facebook, BrassReel Bobby. You can find us all on Facebook, BrassReel Brothers, and you can find me at Twitter, BrassReel Bobby at BrassReel. Well, guys, thanks again so much. I love y'all with all my heart. And remember, life gives you lemons. Make some hot, fresh popcorn.